and peace and blessings be upon you all. Welcome to day 3 of STEM Awareness Week. My name is Joyce, and I'll be your MC for the evening, or afternoon, sorry. The STEM Awareness Week is an annual event hosted by the MSA, Muslim Students Association. The week consists of a series of lectures and activities organized by the MSA to increase awareness of their beliefs, values, and practices. Through this, we hope to reduce ignorance and misconceptions about the world that can harm schools. Activities during the week include talks, exhibits, and information displays, each providing insight into the Islamic way of life and Muslims who follow. Before we start today's event, we will have a short Quranic recitation and translation by Brother Zahir. All right, Brother Zahir, what's up?
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the world, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Master of the Day of Judgment, you do we serve and you do we ask for help. Keep us on the straight path, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed your favors, not the path of those whom thy wrath is brought down upon, nor those who go astray.
Okay, thank you for the recitation. Today's topic is on women in Islam. There are many misconceptions regarding the status of slaves to women. Muslim women oppressed, why do women wear the veil or the hijab? What does Islam really say about women? Our guest speaker, Zahir Ahmed, will help us answer these questions and further understand the life of women. She's a dynamic young female scholar and a native of Chicagoland, Wisconsin. She was raised in Morton Grove and graduated from Niles West High School, where she played varsity basketball. She has served the Muslim community of Chicago through leadership at MTC, IFS, CIOGC, MYMA, ISNA, and as the Department of Head of Islamic Studies at the Islamic Foundation School. She taught courses in Quran, Arabic, and Islamic Studies. She regularly hosts young Muslim art stages, open mics, and counsels young Muslims through study circles that promote a balanced Muslim lifestyle. She received graduate certification in Arabic from Diwan Cairo, in Tajweed, which is the art of Quranic recitation, and traditional Islamic sciences from various institutions in the USA and abroad. During her graduate studies in Islamic Studies and Christian Muslim Relations at the Hartford Seminary, she served as a Muslim chaplain and advisor in Massachusetts. She has also been featured in several documentary films about Islam and will be depicted as a young female Muslim advisor and chaplain in an upcoming PBS documentary about faith and youth leadership in the U.S. It's going to be called The Calling. Currently, she is an Associate University Chaplain at Northwestern University. And without further ado, please help me welcome him to
Hi guys, good afternoon. Oh, this is strong. This is very good. I have a lot to share, so I'm actually going to go ahead. Usually I'll give you like a background, and they talked about varsity basketball, I'll give you a few stories. Maybe if we have time, we'll get into that. What I'd like to do first is go through, I don't know if everyone here can see the screen, okay? Can you, back there, yeah, okay, that's the corner person, okay. So what we're going to be doing is first we're going to look at the idea within the Islamic tradition of women, their dignity, the legacy of Muslim women. And we're not only going to focus on the hijab per se, but the idea of how Muslim women have perceived themselves for the past 1400 years. And then we'll look at hijab specifically, because I think what often happens is when you see a Muslim woman, the first thing you think of is the headgear, right? That's like the first thing that you think of. And I have, several stories that I could share with you about how that's occurred in my life. And of course, as a Muslim woman, the first thing that I always encounter when I see people is like, why do you wear that thing on your head? But what I'd like to do first is go through this idea or concept that all Muslims in Islam follow. So can anyone tell me what the term Islam actually means? Peace, okay. Yes. Submission to God, okay. I remember you. Weren't you my old Islamic studies student? I think so. You better know the meaning of Islam. It's to submit. But what's the purpose of that submission? Like, what does that even mean? I think Christian folk can actually jump right in. If you're of another faith tradition, don't feel odd. Submit to God. Okay, acceptance of the idea that God is one. The idea is that Islam is submission that will allow you to enter into the state of peace. So everything that you are obligated by from God, all of the commandments, are allowing you to attain a sense of peace. So the idea that all of these commandments are there to really help you balance your life. They're not there to create more problems for you, but rather they're there so that you can alleviate yourself and allow yourself to become more tranquil and more content with who you are as a person. Now, when we talk about veiling specifically, I'm going to present a paradigm to you that you may not be used to. So I'm going to present to you maybe a challenging idea for you, that veiling in Islam is from the perspective that it is actually liberating the Muslim woman. So, what is the common perception of a Muslim woman? I'm sorry?
With a scarf.
Okay, wears a scarf, but what else? What are those common misconceptions? Yes. Okay, oppressed. Okay. Any of the men in here? Like, what are your, and just be very frank and very honest, like, we're in an institution that's, highly intellectual, and I know you guys are all really bright folks, so I don't think that I will take anything that you say offensively. I think the idea is that we're going to learn together respectfully. So if you just feel free. Oppressed was one.
Well, all the things that come with oppressed that we associate with oppression, such as ignorance,
Okay.
Isolation, marginality, and as I witnessed after 9/11, potentially dangerous terrorists, misguided. All of these things are, I think, part of the idea of oppressed will be kind of brainwash. All of the associations that we may have to do.
Okay.
Forced under a patriarchal.
So you have some of them. Forced to stay at home, maybe, right? You said ignorance, so like not educated, perhaps.
Yes.
Forced to cover abuse by men and their families. Arranged marriages, that's very common. Actually, a lot more common than probably the rest of them, right? So these are all misconceptions, right? Why do you think they exist? Yes. Misunderstanding, okay. Media, sensationalist media. Were you going to say? You're going to say media, okay.
In some cases, these might actually be true for certain women in certain areas.
That's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. What's your name?
Jill.
Joe. Thanks for sharing that, Joe.
Protection, projection of the self onto the other, the outsiders who are coming up with these, and also politicization of religious or practice differences or political goals.
Okay, wow. Okay, you guys are like far ahead of the game right now. So basically, sensationalist media, someone mentioned lack of knowledge, just not knowing what maybe even misinterpretation of religious texts, difference of opinion, unethical or immoral behavior on part of wherever that geopolitical region may be. So these are all misconceptions. But what Jill pointed out is that some of this actually does happen, right? I mean, this actually happens in different parts of the world where you have women, even in the United States, who are subjugated to men, right? Or by their men, or by their boyfriends, or by whoever, by other women, right? So this is a reality of life, right? Not necessarily the reality of a very particular religious tradition, although Fox News would argue that it is because, or Bill Maher or others would argue that it's because Islam is inherently an evil religion. I'm not even going to argue that with all of you here. I mean, I think you're all a little bit, I mean, again, if you want to take that route and we can discuss that, but I'm assuming that most of you are aware that religion or religions are not inherently evil. It is the people who practice that religious tradition that, right? I mean, I think you're all on the same page. Okay, all right, good. So the question I have for you is, when we're looking at the Muslim woman, which lens are we using, right? So there's this understanding that if you are a defender of democracy, that you inherently are going to ask for the Muslim woman, or that the Muslim woman who's veiled is not doing so because she feels liberated, or that she feels that it is her democratic right to do so. But the question is, so the real question I want to ask you today is, are we looking at this as something of difference or a deficiency? That's the question. So if a Muslim woman is covered, does that mean she's deficient? Or does that mean that she's just different, right? So for example, you have, when you do that, you have the risk of labeling something deficient because it is different than our own understanding. And we have examples of that through history, right? So of Nazi Germany, of Native Americans, of blacks, of women, of gays, right? I mean, the list goes on, right? So this idea that just because something is different, and you learn this when you're in high school. Now there's like, every state has an imperative now that they teach within people and cultures, whether it's within social studies, because my husband's a social studies teacher, he was telling me this, that there's this new policy now that they have to teach you about this idea that respecting all cultures includes this idea that just because someone is different doesn't mean that they're deficient, right? So the next question that's often asked of me is, well, can a Muslim woman be a feminist, right? So how do you define feminism? It's equal opportunity in several things, right? Can someone read that off for me? Okay, so the question is, does Islam guarantee these things for Muslim women? And are they contradictory to the Islamic belief system? And are these only secured for men? Or does Islam value these for both men and women and has secured that for both men and women? Respect was another reproductive choice. So what I want to present to you now is the Quranic paradigm of how Muslim women are considered equals to men and inherently equal as beings. So the first verse I want to share with you is from chapter 4. I know a lot of people are taking notes maybe for some of their classes. So I'm going to go through several of these very quickly, but you can jot down the actual verse. So the Quran basically in chapter 4 says, and whoever does righteous deeds, whether male or female, while being a believer, those will enter paradise and will not be wronged. Now, there's a few more that are coming, but what I wanted to share with you next is the legacy of Muslim women right from the very beginning. So my question when I was growing up, and I started to think about wearing the hijab, my first question was, how did the earliest Muslim women view Islam? Was it a religion that was for men and then they basically started to worship God because the men in their families did? Or did they see an inherent value in following this tradition? So one of the first stories that almost every probably Muslim in here knows about is of Sumayya, right? Ibn al-Khayyat, Sumayya radiallahu anha. Can anyone who's Muslim tell me like briefly who she was? Who was Sumayya? Let's go Muslims in here. Yes?
Wasn't she at the same slave? Am I wrong?
No, that was Bilal. Close. Good job. Alright, you should have failed you. Just kidding! Just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah.
No, I forgot the name.
Oh, there's a hand up.
Sumayya was Ammar's mother, and she was white, and she was the first mother in Islam.
Okay.
She was tortured by...
Alright, that's like Sheikh Google for you right there. No, I'm just kidding. We have a joke like in the Muslim community that like Google can be a Sheikh now. Like a Sheikh is like, scholarly person. So I just call him Sheikh Google. Anyway, so Sumaya was a mother, right, of this young man by the name of Ammar, and he started following the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the very early time of the message.